Hi everyone, it's Randall with Carter Hill Honeybees, and in today's video, it's been a month since I applied my spring treatment of Formic Pro. 2 weeks after the treatment is expired, so I opted to do the 14-day one-time treatment using both strips on my colonies. And today I'm going to follow up and do some mite washes, not on all my colonies, but several of them, probably over half, and this will tell me what the results was. So I'm hoping to see a maximum of one mite in the wash. Hopefully most of them will have zero, and I know that seems low, but from what I've studied and learned, from 70 to 80% of the mites should be under the cappings right now, and if that's the case, there would be very little mites out on the bees for me to capture in this wash. The Formic Pro is supposed to kill the mites supposedly under the capping, so I'm going to gather some data here today, and I'll briefly touch on my kit again. You can look in my playlist, and there's a video there on spring management, or I think I actually have a varroa mite management section in there that shows how I do an alcohol watch, and I'll spare doing that today, but I'll briefly touch on right here how I do it. So I prefer, when I started back in 2020, there was no, you couldn't get no rubbing alcohol anywhere. So I followed Randy Oliver's lead, and I do the Dawn Ultra wash. It works very well for me. This is a 2-quart container, half a gallon. So the formula would be to put 2 tablespoons of Dawn Ultra dishwashing liquid per gallon. So I've got 1 tablespoon in here. I put the water in first, then I put the dishwashing liquid and I stir it up, and that causes it not to really foam up, and that's ideal. And what I do, I've got 4 of these Vito Pharma Easy Checks, and this saves me time. And what I'll do is I'll go down there and get 4 samples, and by the time I come back around, most of the mites has done rained down in the bottom, and I only have to shake it 20 or 30 seconds to get them to fall out. And so it saves the risk for me and saves time, and I'm able to do this quicker. One tip I'd like to give on this is, if you're going to use this or some other means of doing an alcohol or a mite wash, I see people want to try to do this, and I do this when I first dump the bees in there. I'll do that to slosh the liquid up there one time. That way I can take this off and fill it on up, and not to have bees fly out. But once I get the liquid in there where it needs to be, it's important to swirl this in such a way like you're creating a tornado in a jar with water, if you've ever done that. And you want to cause the bees to tumble in there. If you shake it up and down, you can cause the mites to slosh back up into the screen and into bees, and that could throw off the accuracy of the count some. So I think it's really important that you swirl and get those bees rolling in there, and that helps with the accuracy of the wash. Also, I can take this half a gallon, and I can easily wash all my colonies because I recycle by once I do the count. I've got this coffee strainer that fits perfectly over that, and I pour the soap water back in there, allow me to recycle it, and that captures the mites, and I can just simply dump it out and go to the next. And then I have this plastic Rubbermaid dish pan, and these are hard to find anymore, but it has the smooth bottom, and I got a half a cup measure to gather the half a cup of bees. So what I want to shake in here is nurse bees. So how do I tell if there's nurse bees in the colony? I get a frame with pollen and bees on it, or a frame adjacent to it, or an open frame of brood that are being actively serviced by the bees. Shake it in here, and after a little while you can kind of judge what you want to put in here, maybe a couple of bees. Then you can just shake it around a little bit, jostle it, and the field force or the older bees will fly off, the nurse bees won't fly. And at that point in time, you want to carefully check, make sure your queen's in here. Then you can rack them down in a quarter like so, scoop them up and put them in here. Then you put them in your easy check and shake at that time, and then swirl it, and then do your count, and then replenish it. And then I've got all my mite stuff in a handy tote, and makes keeping up with it a whole lot easier. So that's kind of the rundown of how I do my mite wash. I feel like this is after 10 years of no treatment, and 5 years ago you wouldn't catch me anywhere near this stuff, but right now I think it's very important, and it's the key to keeping my bees alive. I can already see a big difference in monitoring. Now I know I don't have to guess and wish. I know where my mite count's going to be after I perform this today. So I want to spare the activity to do that, so I'll get some samples out of this yard, and then I'll show you some of the results. All right, I've completed a check of this yard. I checked 4 of the 7 colonies here. They all had 0. That's exactly what I was hoping for. Now, I'm not saying I have no mites. What I'm saying is the infestation rate right now is really low. So I'm well pleased with that. That probably means the colony should be able to build up, perform pretty well during the nectar flow, which is just now getting a start. Now in this yard, I have some colonies here that are struggling. All these colonies, but the one that I first talked about, I had to take home and feed. I've got 3 here that I think has a mild case of European foul brood. The brood, they've been struggling a few weeks. I think I'm going to take some of those stronger nukes I have left of the 8 that's left now and requeen these and see if I can't get them headed in the right direction. They're just basically sitting there and lagging behind. One of them's trying to recover, but I think they need a change in genetics to get them going. But so far that's just 4 out of several more I'm going to check. So far we're off to a good start. So that's 4 colonies with 0 mites in the wash. So let's go to the next yard and see what we got there. All right, we're at the next group of colonies. I got 7 colonies here. I'll definitely be testing one on the end. That colony for the last 2 years has the highest mite count. Evidently the bees must have some kind of resistance to the viruses. Back in November they had like over, I quit even count, but well over 70 mites in the wash. So I want to see how it's doing. And then they had the highest count back in 2020. It had like 83 mites when I did the first ever mite wash on it in late July that year. So the colony's still surviving, and I kept it cut back. It's a little slow building up, so I'm kind of anxious to see. And I'll probably take these 3 right here. They're the strongest that's here from the way it appears for the way they're working. And this is probably my 2nd strongest yard overall. So I'll go ahead and get them samples and I'll give you a report when we get done. Okay, I've completed the assessment of these colonies here. I started with the one that had the huge mite counts I talked about a moment ago. And it had 0. Matter of fact, I wound up just doing 3 of them here. All 3 of them had 0. The brood nest looking pretty good, and they are lagging a little bit behind. I did put a super on those 3 right there, the tall ones, but they're not doing near as good as that strong yard, but this is my 2nd best yard. So we'll go to another yard. I got 1 yard left with 7 in it. We'll wash 2 or 3 there, and then I'll wash a couple, 3 at home, and we'll be done. But so far, I'm pleased with what I'm seeing, but I'm cautiously optimistic because I know more than likely I do have mites in there still. Just the infestation rate is really low right now. All right, off to the next yard. So this yard right now, I currently only have 2 colonies here. That colony there replaced their queen through emergency queen cells. I didn't wash it, but I washed this one, so it got a 0 as well. It's been about 5 days since I did the last wash here, and today I'm finishing up. We've had, between being busy at work and the weather being rainy and stuff, I'm just now getting back around to finishing up. But right now we're still on track, 0 mites. So on to the next. I just did mite washes in this yard. I washed the 3 biggest ones, that one on the end, and that one, and that one. Got 0s on all 3. Had a queenless colony there. I'd pulled it down to the medium. It had eggs. I wasn't sure, so when I come back today, I could clearly see it had laying workers, so I just set those mediums up there. So those 3 colonies are doing pretty good. So we got 1 more to go. So that makes 10 or 11 colonies I've washed so far. We have 0s in all of them. All right, I'm at the last yard I'm about to wash. This is my best yard. I've talked about it a few times. I'm going to wash 3 of these colonies. That one there had, last summer after harvest, it had like 52 mites in the wash. That colony there had 60 mites in the wash. And then that colony down there on the end, it had like I think it was around 40. I looked on the paper a minute ago from last year and I done forgot. But that's the 3 colonies I'm going to wash here, and we'll see how it goes. But when we get these washed, I'll give you the results. So right there you see, after washing 15 colonies, I believe, that is the only varroa mite I have gotten in any of the washes. So colony number 7 here in my strongest yard, the only one to give me any mites whatsoever. So well pleased with that. All right, now that we've completed the treatment and the check of the washes afterwards, it's time to have a little tailgate talk, and I'll discuss what I saw, what I observed, and basically my review and what I thought about Mite Away Quick Pro. Overall, I'm very pleased with the results. Definitely the spring application for me is tricky in terms of when to get it on the way I wanted to, meeting the minimum temperature barrier. And I wanted to get it on right after the spring turnover was occurring, which is when pretty much all the winter bees are gone and you've got the new short-lived young spring bees in there. I didn't want to stress those winter bees towards the end of their life, which naturally is the most stressful time of the year for them, trying to turn that colony over because they have a limited number of days. So I wanted to try to wait beyond that. So I wound up having to wait an extra week due to the weather not meeting the minimum temperature. So once I did get it on, I elected to go with a 2-week treatment where I put the 2 strips on there. My nukes, I did 1 strip on those, and what I saw is it appeared to have shut the queens down for 3 to 4 days. I thought theoretically if it worked that way, and it appears that it did, I felt like it would aid me a little bit in swarm prevention, and I think I've achieved the desired result with that. If you kind of do the math and figure in what the natural attrition is at this time of the year, the bee loss per day, and then 2 or 3 days the queen not laying at 12 to 1,500 eggs a day, possibly more. In my estimation, that would be equivalent, when you factor those in, that would be equivalent to pulling out a couple frames of brood. To this point, even though I've caught a couple pretty close, I've not had any swarms in any of my colonies yet. So my goal going into this was to have the maximum of 1 mite in a wash. I definitely achieved that. I thought for sure I was going to get 0 mites in all of them, but that one colony there had 1 mite. So, I'm not thinking when I say 0 mites in the wash. Keep in mind, probably 70 to 80% of the mites are under the cappings. It just means I have a very low infestation rate, but I know good and well there's mites in there. They're just a lot less of them now. And that should allow the colonies, and they're recovering very quickly, that should allow them to progress through the nectar flow with good healthy bees, and should allow them to focus on that part of their annual cycle rather than fighting viruses and dealing with that. So I'm hoping that this will wind up producing more honey. The real number for me is going to come after honey harvest towards the end of July. At that point in time, when I do pre-treatment washes, which I did not do this time, but I will do them for sure at the end of the honey harvest at the end of July. My goal is to have no more than 5 mites in any of my washes, and I will wash all the colonies at that time. If I'm successful in doing that, then I'll feel like I've made a significant improvement over the last 2 summers, and I'll feel like I'm on the right track. But that's part of the learning process with this. I'm just going to have to go for it, gather data, and make adjustments accordingly, and that's exactly what I'm doing. Another thing that I saw, I did have quite a few queen losses, but I can't sit here and tell you that the mite quick probe caused it. I had significant queen losses before. I had queen losses last spring. There's something there about queens. I can't put my thumb on it, but for some reason I seem to be losing more than the average queens, and I think other beekeepers in this area are doing the same. The queens I did lose was in weaker colonies. Several of them did make emergency queens, and they're laying. Altogether during the treatment, I would say 5 or 6 of them went queenless and all, but I think 2 or 3 of them, I'm trying to remember, 2 or 3 of them made emergency queens, are now back to laying, and they're moving on, but they're behind as well. But I think that the stronger colonies had practically no issues. So again, that goes back to my ill preparedness of getting the bees prepared for last winter. So I'll be using the Formic Pro again in the future. I may try the 1 week 1 pad treatment. I wanted the higher knockdown rate this time because I didn't get to treat but 1 time with the oxalic acid in December, and I felt like I probably wintered some mites more than average. So I felt like I needed to have a pretty aggressive knockdown this spring to try to play a little bit of catch up. But that's basically it. Like I say, I'm well pleased with the product. I'll definitely use it again. A little bit scary for me. The application is a little bit tricky this time of the year, but with a little bit of planning and understanding of the bee's annual cycle and what's going on in the colony, you can definitely use it successfully in my experience. While editing the video, I realized an important experience I had with formic acid a couple of years ago that I forgot to put in there. So I want to cover that now. So the size of the cavity you have, which is also illustrated on the instructions, they seem to be important, and I kind of neglected this in the spring of 2020. I already had all my supers on, and I wanted to get a quick knockdown. I had 5 or 6 mediums on there, and I didn't do a pre or a post mite wash, but I know the numbers was probably high. But after doing the honey harvest and then coming back and doing mite wash, it was indicated to me that the formic acid in a big volume, the efficacy is very poor, and that's not the fault of the product. It's too much area. So the instructions specifically say either a single deep or a nuke or perhaps a double deep. So I was careful to this time not to go over a double deep in height while applying that product. Once again, I just wanted to share that experience with you that I forgot during the original filming of this video. So I hope this information is beneficial. Thank you for joining me today for this video. Never stop learning. We'll catch you on the next one.